Good morning. This is Professor Anderson with a little bit of feedback for your writing assignment number 1, rough draft. I want to share with you that when I'm looking at any type of writing from students, the first thing I do is just take a quick stroll through to make sure that all the components or the necessary and required components of the assignment are there. And I see you have a good understanding. There are a couple of areas I want to focus your attention to. First is this first section. You want to give a background. You describe where it is that you work, and you need to describe the kind of communication. This section is not for the communication inhibitor, but the type of communication that takes place there. This section is where you identify those communication inhibitors, and I'll share with you, this is the writing sample from, if you go under table of contents and then week 1 and then sample papers in week 1 and then this one, it says read sample paper. You'll see here, notice how that part 2, it's bulleted. You want to make sure that you offset in some way each one of these communication inhibitors that you've labeled and use what's called parallel structure. So you go down here to the application and you need to make sure you have 3 to 4 examples. And when you give me this type of example, you want to use a very specific, I know it says that you've been interrupted, but just, say on an busy afternoon, I was speaking with a client and a colleague came in and interrupted our conversation. Then the name of the inhibitor is interpersonal, and, interrupting the conversation forced, this is labeled an interpersonal type of inhibitor because you give the definition of here, a lack of trust, social skills, because it takes a host of social skills to understand that interrupting is not kind. So you want to make sure that each one of these that you've identified, you're giving a specific example here. And I notice you have the same one. So you want to try to find an example of this cultural barrier and organizational barrier to use here in these application of the inhibitors. And then at the bottom, you've given an understanding of the effectiveness of communication. You want to use these 4 inhibitors that you've cited in your justification. So you don't really give much of a description of what the director does here. You just, so using it to support your evaluation is a little skewed. You want to use those examples to support your evaluation. And that's the feedback that I have to offer you. I look forward to reading your final copy.